to the Biz Coach Show, hosted by my Biz Coaches and presented by the TLG Group. Our show is focused on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. Your hosts today are David Macon, that's me, and Eric Whitmore. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, David. Enjoying the beautiful sun in Arizona.
Awesome. Sounds good. As always, great to hang out with you. And we've got a special guest today. Let's take a minute to meet our guest. Our guest today is Jon Stoddard. Jon is the host of the Top M&A Entrepreneurs podcast. On his show, Jon has interviewed over 100 serial acquirers. Jon's guests have collectively acquired over 500 businesses and over $53 billion in value. Jon has personally been involved with the successful acquisition of 3 businesses, and he's the genius behind the deal flow system. Jon is passionate about helping people start acquiring companies and potentially become serial acquirers themselves. Well, Jon, it is awesome to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. The genius behind deal flow system. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. You bet. Well, hey, great to have you with us. And hopefully it's fun having you on the other side of the podcast, getting interviewed for a change. And we're excited to pick your brain a little bit today.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. It's called cross-pollination. And
awesome.
There you go.
Yeah. Love it. So, well, cool. Well, hey, before we jump into our topic for today, we just want to encourage you, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification so you get notified of future episodes where we have great guests just like Jon. And while you're at it on YouTube, go check out Jon's show and subscribe as well. And our topic for today is M&A Q&A, which seems to fit our guest, right? So we're going to be diving into all things M&A. So I think we'll just start with Jon, maybe a little bit more on the personal side, kind of how you got interested in M&A and what inspired you to kind of dedicate, this portion of your life to this topic.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I actually got started M&A when I was younger. I grew up in Wilcox, Arizona, a small town, a couple 100 miles from here. And my first acquisition was buying a cow at an auction for about $75. And it grew by itself, it seemed, when I was 15. No, my dad paid for feed and everything to 2,000 pounds, and we sold it. So that was my first acquisition. But I got into the podcasting a couple years ago. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's cool. And you've had a lot of guests in that time, and I'm sure covered a lot of ground. So, yeah, as I said earlier, we're excited to pick your brain on it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So, yeah, go ahead, Eric.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So I think, just kind of looking back at all the guests that you've had, all the episodes that you've done, are there maybe some interesting or particularly memorable deals that you've covered and kind of what made them stand out to you?
It wasn't anything specific deal because I talk about the top M&A entrepreneurs, and my whole template is about the hero's journey, kind of like the Star Wars movie script. Lives in an ordinary world. He gets a call to adventure. He meets a mentor. He faces big challenges. He loses. He comes back, and he comes back transformed. And that's kind of the whole template I do. So I interview entrepreneurs like, where'd you start? What were you doing before that? And one of the most memorable ones was the guy was a teacher. And he acquired I'm a teacher. I mean, probably making $25,000 a year. And he acquired a business on his off time. It was an e-commerce business. He did fix it, did everything he could. Like he worked with the SEO. He worked with an email system. He, got people to buy more, got people to bring more to his website, and he got people to come back and buy more often. He did those 3 or 4 things, and he sold it. He made more in that one e-commerce transaction than he had the previous whole year in teaching. So he left, and the end result after 2 to 3 years was just recently he raised a fund to go public. He raised $13.5 million to go public to acquire e-commerce companies. He is now a publicly operated company.
Wow.
Yeah. That's an awesome story.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, he was such a laid back person too. You just wouldn't think like, okay, if you saw him sitting in a bar talking to other people, you go like, no, he's not an entrepreneur that owns, I don't know, 10 companies now, e-commerce companies with a net worth of probably, I don't know what the valuation is. Let's say he was like $26 million worth, and a few years before he was a teacher for $26,000 a year. Yeah.
Jeez. That's
David,
awesome.
there's hope for us yet.
You just got to start.
Right?
Yeah.
That's
cool.
That's pretty cool. That's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got me thinking as you were talking there, John. As you've been talking to people, do you ever find is there like a specific type of business or characteristic of a business that you see come up over and again as you're talking to people on your show?
E-commerce is big. A lot of people talk about that, and SaaS is big. And I've interviewed a number of people that purchase SaaS companies, software companies. But the side of that is you're not going to get a good price on that. You're going to be overpaying for that stuff, and you have to come in with cash to buy those companies.
Right.
Yeah, the two companies I've interviewed, a guy was Michael Girdley, and another guy was Kevin McCardle. Kevin just raised a huge $100 million fund to go buy software companies, because you can't go into them if there was off market or on market and say, hey, I'm interested in your company. I'll give you this amount of money, and then try to do an SBA loan.
Right.
SBA loan is going to keep you in a guardrails about how much you could borrow.
Sure.
Right. They're not going to let you borrow more than what the underwriters think is the valuation of the company. So you got to bring cash to those. It's like, you want to buy this car, and you drive over to the guy's house and look at the car, and you're not going to go, well, let me go back and go get a loan to go buy the car. And he goes, no, man, I've got 5 other people lined up to buy the car.
Yeah.
You got to pull cash out of your pocket to get that. So that's what I see a lot of that. And that's what happens to SaaS and e-commerce businesses.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And John, you mentioned the idea of on market or off market. What percentage of the people that you've interviewed over the years are finding off market deals, and is that predominantly where most people are getting their deals?
No, most people get them on market deals. The reason is there's a couple thresholds here. On market deal is a business owner that has told you and signed legal documents that they want to sell. They're motivated to get out of the business. That's a huge threshold. And 2, they already have a valuation on the business. And usually the valuation is reasonable if they go with the broker that's been in the business for a while and they've sold a lot of businesses. They're gonna know that, hey, this is like a restaurant. I got to get people in the table. I got to get them out. They're gonna have a reasonable valuation. The opposite of off-market deals is if you could take any company out there. You can find on LinkedIn and go, hey, I'd like to buy your company. First thing they're gonna do is, yeah, okay, write me a check for $50 million. Well, you only did 1 million last year. I'm not gonna write a check. That's the process it goes through. It's a big chasm between motivated and, first time somebody's asked me to buy the business, I'll sell it if it's FU money.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Now that kind of changes if you buy your first business and it's a platform business, right? Let's say it's HVAC, and you're in a big city like Phoenix, Arizona, and you're like, great, but I want to expand. I want to get this bigger. You already know who the suppliers are, the vendors are. You know what the ecosystem looks like for your platform business. Then you can go start acquiring companies, off-market deals.
Right. Okay.
A lot faster. And your balance sheet's stronger too.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the guys I interviewed was Brian Beers. He owns 30 plus Midas franchises. Now, he had the benefit of buying 4 from his dad, but they were in disrepair when he took them over. He fixed them, and then he does a podcast at the Midas trade shows and just plants the seed and says, hey, if you're ever interested in selling, let me know.
No
And
way.
then 25 acquisitions later, he's at 30.
Wow. Talk about genius marketing.
A podcast.
Right?
Yep.
At the, what'd you say, at the Midas convention?
At the Midas convention. That's right.
Yeah. Well, that's one way to plant the seed, right? Yeah,
Awesome.
and often we just did a business conference a couple of weeks ago, and that was one of the things that I educate people on is as coaches, one of our biggest challenges when people are asking for coaching or they're engaging with us for coaching, they often have not thought about their end goal, right? And so one of the first things we say is we have to start with the end goal in mind. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I learned, and I think I might have shared with you when you and I had our first conversation, probably the best thing that I learned from David and I worked for the same company for a number of years, and it was a wireless dealer. But the CEO of that company planted the seed with the person that ended up buying the company 6 years earlier.
Yep.
And he nurtured that relationship for 6 years. And it was good that it was, the more I thought through it after the transition took place, it was genius, because you think about it, we were in a unique scenario because when you're a wireless dealer, the carrier has to approve. So it's just like a franchise, right? The carrier has to approve who the acquirer is. And that you're only talking about a very small group of people that are, one, have come to the table with enough capital to buy you at the multiple you're looking for. And then two, have the business acumen in the industry that it's in, to be able to come in and do that, have the carrier sign off on the deal. So it was a very, very small niche group of people. And he knew that going into that scenario, that he needed to nurture a relationship with somebody who would be a target audience for us at some point down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. On-market deals are tougher. They take longer to nurture, to, reap what you sow. It just takes a long time. Yeah.
Yep.
If you've got
Makes
the patience for that, great. If you were a search funder, let's say you're sponsored by somebody's paying your bills until you purchase a company, you've got a 2-year window to purchase a really good company with a 2 million EBITDA. So there's a sense of urgency. If you're a W-2 and there's no timeline, start with off market. But if you really want to get started, you go start with the platform company that's for sale. The guy wants to sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Cool. Well, you shared some examples of, deals that were awesome, teacher to millionaire in 2 years. I think that's pretty incredible. You've probably heard or seen maybe deals that were less awesome and probably some mistakes that were made. So I'd be curious, what are some of the common mistakes that you hear about or you've seen companies make during the M&A process and how to avoid them?
There's a couple parts of that, because if you want to get into the M&A process, and there's a lot of people that love to buy a company, is they don't do enough deal flow. That you have to have abundant deal flow coming in. Warren Buffett goes you've got to have deal flow, and you've got to have a lot of in front of your face so you can pick the best one.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, you're going to look at probably 500 businesses to get down to 2 LOIs and a potential sale. So that's probably reaching out to, maybe 1,000 or more of these, getting the SIMs, which is the information about the business, confidential information memorandum. And then you're looking at the SIM itself. Would you like to do it? Does it look like a good business? Is it profitable? Do you want to take the next step? Then you go through this, put yourself in an NDA, and then you get the financials, 3 years of financials, 2 balance sheets, 12 months apart. And you look at those and you examine it, and lots of deals die right there, right?
Right.
Here's the big mistake. If you don't know how to read financials, which is accounting is the business of language of the business, accounting is the language of business. And you've got to know that language. Yeah. And I see so many people waste time because they don't know how to read and tell a good business from a bad business. Yeah. And you should, for instance, I coach a lot of students. They come to me and I say, well, the income statement looks great, But you know that bottom number on the income statement where it's EBITDA or net income, that's a theory. We don't really know if they make that money or not.
Right.
Right? So give me the balance sheet. And by the way, I need to see 12 apart. And then we could take a look at the balance sheet and I go, well, holy cow, look, man, they've got a ton of debt here, right?
Right.
And they owe a lot of money. They got big accounts receivable. This deal's dead, man. You're not going to be able to borrow any money from the SBA, and you're going to spend your next 1-2 years financing and probably divorce your wife. What do you want to do?
Yeah, sign me up for B.
So what do you want to do? You want to buy a good business at a fair price where people loan you money, or do you want to try to fix this thing and overspend?
Right.
Yeah. You really need to know accounting and what a balance sheet means and then what an income statement means.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, John. I think I've probably said this I know I've said this probably thousands of times, quite honestly, but that was probably one of the biggest contributors to my success in my career. Helping other companies grow and scale was my ability to be able to tear apart financial statements and recognize opportunities. Digging in, being able to create key metrics within, your business model, not just your P&L numbers, but also what are the key metrics so you can look high level and recognize from day to day, week to week, whether or not a business is progressing versus waiting until 30 days after and look at the autopsy report, after the month's over. And there's a lot that goes into that. And I am completely baffled how many times I get in front of a business owner and realize they don't know either their P&Ls, their balance sheet. They don't know how to read them. They don't understand them. And they don't have any key metrics that they measure. They may have a few, but they're not interrelated and they don't necessarily tie everything together for them. And it's just amazing how many of them are in business and have good businesses, but they don't have a good handle on it. And that's probably often why they struggle when they get to the point they want to try and sell the business, because they haven't really built it correctly.
Yeah. The purpose of a business is turn assets into cash flow. And you're either doing a good job of that efficiently, effectively, productively, or you're not, right? Or you could get better.
Right.
And Warren Buffett's has a phrase. He was like, hey, I can filter out bad deals in 5 minutes or less, because he understands what an income statement does. And this is what he asked for. When he was buying private companies, I've got the letter that he used to send. It said, hey, send me 3 to 5 years worth of financials and 2 balance sheets, 12 months apart, same date. Ask for that. And that'll tell you a story. I mean, one of my students sent me a deal. It was a delay the pain, knee arthritis kind of centers, and they had 4 or 5 or 6, and it looked profitable in the income statement. It said $6 million on the top line and then maybe $1 million on the bottom line, I think. And I said, well, get the balance sheets. Sends me the balance sheets, and in debt or liabilities, you could see he's borrowing money from somebody else to pay all the bills.
Right.
Each location had debt on it from borrowing money in that year period.
Wow.
You've got to be able to that's not a deal.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you're, like distressed firms. And some people do a great job of that. That's
Sure.
And look, I've interviewed people on my show that said, hey man, I like distressed companies. Right? Because I know what I can do real fast, but also, he's got a cushion in the background. It goes like, I got a year's time. I can fix this. I got the right money. I can budget it. I know what needs to be done to turn it around.
Yeah. I have the team and the resources that can step in and do what I need to do. I've already acknowledged what's missing or what's broken and needs to be fixed, so I can fix it quickly, or at least I have a good idea. Those are all factors that play into whether or not you can take over. I mean, most of my career was turning around other markets that were broken. And so I have a tendency to look at things and say, oh, I can make it better. But I wouldn't want that to be my first acquisition deal. That's for sure.
I wouldn't do it on your first acquisition.
Right. Absolutely. Probably not in your first couple, right?
Yeah. And I have one student keeps sending me this trucking company that's losing money. I go, one, nobody's going to lend you money to borrow that money. And you don't have $6 to $5 million to buy it.
Right.
So what are you going to do? And the assets are only worth $1.4 million.
Oh man.
You can't even asset borrow for what he wants for the business. So this is a waste of time.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, you shared some great tips there on kind of what to look for to weed out, is it going to be successful or not? Any other themes that you see with successful acquisitions?
Yeah, the one of the big thing is definitely cultural fit. I mean, buying buying a company, what their culture is and their comp plan. I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger said, if you see what their incentives, comp plan is, you know what their incentives are, and you know how they're going to behave, right?
Right.
But let's take the cultural thing. You can't be Black Rifle Coffee and then go buy this tea maker that appeals to the Democratic party base. It doesn't work. That's an extreme example, but that's what you got to look for. If you're buying a company that kind of soft skills, is that most of the people have been around there for 10 years, maybe they're veterans or something, and then you buy this other company that's completely like a turnover ratio of a lot smaller and it doesn't fit, it's going to cause problems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Culture is definitely a big factor. I see that often as an opportunity. And the challenge is, unless you've worked in an environment where you understand what culture truly means and how it can be employed in an organization to help grow and scale it, you could, if you're an acquirer and you're buying into and know that if you're buying a business at nothing else, you're upsetting the culture just by coming in and acquiring a new business, right? At least what was there previously. And if you don't understand how to indoctrinate or create a new culture or absorb and meld a new culture, you're going to struggle immensely in an acquisition. I can totally see that.
Yeah, the thing about that is you can't really tell the culture, because the culture is usually based on the founder of the company or the owner of the company, right? And you really can't like make one visit and or read some sims or documents on the website to see what the culture is. So you have to ask a lot of questions to find out what it is. And then you do maybe some skip level questions with, part of their management team.
Yep.
I mean, I had one interview. It was a guy that bought a number of companies in the UK. He was an English citizen. And he said, my first acquisition, the old seller said, hey, come into the office to meet my team. And he took me into the office. All my team was around there. And then he said, the seller said, okay, here's the new owner. I'm out. So, think about that culture of that team. They probably were, people that hated to come in at 9, overjoyed to leave at 5. And they didn't care about improving anything or, putting ideas in the company based upon the culture of that founder. Would he have been able to learn more about that culture by asking more questions? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
we rough transition. Holy smokes!
Reminds me of that story I used to tell you, David. You tell all of our employees about the first time I sat down with that one person that fired somebody.
Oh yes,
you're out.
Yep,
you're out. We lost video on him. Yeah,
my camera dropped.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
So, well, I adjust there. There was a question I had with that also, John, when I was going to mention that when I acquired a coffee shop, you mentioned skip level conversations. We 2014, I think 2013, I think we bought a coffee shop here in Phoenix. And I remember I was adamant. There was three of us, three partners that acquired it. It was an existing person, a person owned it, husband wife scenario, and they had bought it from the previous owner. So the business was like 11 years old. This current owner had it for 2 years. And when we sat down with them, one of the things I was super adamant about was making sure that we met the baristas, the people that were engaging with the clients on a day-in-day basis. And obviously, you know how sensitive that can be. When
the first thing is like, oh my God, they're going to sell it. I'm going to get fired. Well, what's going on?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I remember we were having the conversation, myself and the partners, and I said to my partners, I'm like, look, we need to make sure we have a conversation with these people, because I believe that the owner's the problem with the business, but we need to talk to the people and find out that that's accurate. And finally, through the process, as we got closer, we got close enough to know that, okay, we're comfortable to make the commitment. they're comfortable enough, but they let us speak to the people. That was super important, and trying to uncover as much information as I could. Right. It was just trying to sift through with the right questions and figure out, like you said, ask a lot of questions and make sure you understand, culturally, what's the gap here? Why is the business not doing what it used to do? And that was helped.
Yeah.
We had to ask a ton of questions to make sure we uncovered that.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of due diligence. I have a list of 100 questions I asked to open it up. And I'd never be afraid to ask the seller some questions, because, you're going to go into debt, or you're going to spend over $1 million to buy this business. It's your prerogative to ask as many questions as possible. Kind of like a Columbo, bumbling around and go, well, tell me a little bit about this. Why is that process like that? You're like, tell me how you hired, who you hired, and
Right.
what's the profit margin on that product right there? What's your best selling product? And just dig as much as, because risk comes from not knowing what you're doing, right? The unknown, right?
Yep.
So at least you understand the risk because you're asking the question. Maybe you don't know how to fix it right now, but you understand or have an expectation, because that's what happens. Like, I mean, it happened to me when I bought a business. Like I didn't ask about it, and it pops up later as a problem. Like, and it kind of got me into trouble. So, ask as many questions as you want, and then due diligence.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think, just looking at, obviously you've done several deals yourself. You've done a lot of episodes with people that have done lots of deals. Have you noticed any changes over, the last, I don't know, could be months, years, or maybe any trends that you're seeing around M&A?
There was I think in the last couple of years, there was a lot of online movement towards the no money down purchase of businesses. I saw a lot of that. I think that's subsiding a little bit, because it's kind of you can try to go buy a business with no money down, and then you get somebody's going to throw ice water on you. Like, yeah, is your name Rihanna? No. Tony Robbins? No. What about Ryan Reynolds? No. Okay, you can go away now.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's just, it doesn't work. There's always going to be an equal or greater exchange of value, right? Always.
Yeah.
It's just nobody that owns a profitable, good running business is going to give their business to somebody else, unless your name is, let's say Ryan Reynolds or Rihanna. Rihanna, there was a cosmetic company, and they asked Rihanna, hey, you want to be part of our company? We'll give you 50%. We'll leverage your celebrity authority, and boom.
Right.
Yeah.
So John, one of the questions I would have for you in regard to that question specifically is, I read, so I'm not sure that it's accurate or as accurate as I believe it to be, but hedge funds are coming down in the size and scope of the business, as long as it's a good business and it's profitable. And there used to be 10, 20 million was kind of like the minimum they'd go after, but I've heard that they're coming and looking at good businesses at lower EBITDAs.
I haven't seen that directly from a hedge fund or private equity fund, but I've seen what they have been doing is giving money to other entrepreneurs that are doing roll-ups.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. For instance, Kevin McArdle and Michael Gurley. Like Michael Gurley, private equity firm, they can't go buy $1 million, $5 million businesses, because it doesn't move the needle and it just sucks up time. But they can give $50 million to Michael Gurley,
who can
go buy a portfolio of 1 to 5 companies.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. And that probably, that kind of corroborates kind of my thought process and what I'd heard and what I read about that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. It is. So it is true. It's not what you said. It's not untrue. It is true.
Yeah.
It's just the way they do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that makes sense. Yeah. And I know in the service-based industry, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think we talked about that in our last conversation. Lots of, I don't know if it's plumbers, but plumbers, roofers, that kind of category of business where there's a good margin, a good EBITDA, it's operated well. To your point, you take that platform and you add to it and you aggregate similar businesses throughout the valley, or, wherever, your position is where you're at, and aggregate within a particular area. And you can, within a short period of time, if you've got access to capital, you build a really nice business for yourself that way.
Yeah. One of the guys I interviewed, Adam Coffey, he was an ex-Army guy. He's on LinkedIn big. He was a CEO for a private equity company. He wasn't working for the private equity company. He was the entrepreneur going out and acquiring these companies. He's purchased over 100 HVAC companies.
Wow.
Throughout the United States, and a tremendously large portfolio of HVAC companies. And then they took that portfolio of HVAC companies and sold it to a bigger private equity company.
Right.
Yeah. So here's what he does. Like, there's a local company here was just bought by his company. I can't even remember the HVAC company, but they'll buy, they have cash and they'll buy 66% of the business, something like that. Or, majority of the business. And they say, hey, you could keep the other 33% because your second exit is going to be larger than your first exit.
Right.
Because once we, roll this up into a portfolio of 25 HVAC companies, the revenue and the multiples arbitrage goes up really high. And then they sell that revenue to a larger private equity company. And that triggers another exit event where they get paid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm putting myself in a perspective of, maybe somebody that's listening or watching, and, maybe this is all new to them, or maybe they're on the cusp of, that first M&A deal. So I'm curious, do you have any advice for somebody that is maybe doing this for the first time, how they can maximize their chance of success?
Yeah. There's a lot of lessons I could give. One is to know accounting and understanding that. The other is get abundant deal flow, right? Don't go look at 5 businesses over a 5-month period. It's just not going to happen, right? You need to be looking at 5 businesses per week. And you could generate that from on-market deals with all the websites out there that sell on-market deals, to local deals, to, if you don't have enough time, you get to start knocking on doors. Hey, let me know if you ever wanted to sell. You have a great business here. Let me know if you ever want to sell. Those things are just planting seeds. They take a hell of a lot longer to do. But if you talk to 1,000 people, I would say maybe 17 of them will come back and say, I'm interested in selling. Right. And set your expectations on how long this is going to take. Like I talked about search funders a moment ago, but search funders are entrepreneurs that are looking for businesses. They're just sponsored by big private equity firms. They give them 2 years to find a business. Wow. So set your expectations about how long it's going to take and buy a $1 million business. It could take 12 months to 2 years.
It's great advice.
Yeah.
And John, when you say $1 million, are you talking $1 million EBITDA? Are you talking $1 million top line revenue?
Well, I'm talking about $1 million EBITDA. Now, the smaller businesses are, they kind of fall in different categories. If you're going to try to buy a CPA firm in Phoenix, doing $500,000, most of the times those people are going to be asking for cash, at least $250,000 in cash. So that takes you out of something. Why buy a $500,000 business that's only throwing $250,000 cash off? Why not buy $1 million business where I can put 10% down that's cranking off $1 million in revenue?
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So let's say, somebody's looking, they look at, I think you said 500 down to 2 deals. They're looking at different deals. Is there a certain deal structure that you find works best?
Yeah, whatever makes a seller happy, right? You get the right price, and sometimes, you're going to get a couple deals. The seller's going to get a couple deals on hand, and they're going to look very similar. They could probably in price be 10% difference, and then it's the soft stuff that's going to get him to sell, him or her to sell their business, right? How many times did you talk to that business? Do you have experience in the industry? What's your balance sheet look like? Because if you took, 2 buyers side by side, and one's a first-time SBA lender, and he's going to put all his money into this business, and you've owned it for 10 years. You got, 10 plus, 10, 15 employees, and they've been, all of them been there for 10 years. And then the other buyer is rolling up your company, offers you the same price, got a huge balance sheet, offers you 50% down with cash and 50% seller financing. Which one are you going to take? Usually the seller is going to say, I'll take the big guy, the balance sheet's better. I know I'm going to get paid.
Right.
Because the SBA guy is like, well, right now, SBA loans are 11%. That's a lot of debt on my business. And my employees have been around 10 years, and you don't even have a contractor's license. So, and you've never been in the industry. So, why am I buying from you? Or why am I selling to you?
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Earlier, Eric, you were talking about, the wireless acquisition, needed carrier approval, all that. Got me thinking, certainly there's going to be some M&A deals where there's going to be legal or maybe regulatory challenges that pop up. So any tips on navigating any of those types of things, whether it's legal or, government regulations that play a factor there?
I've had some students that looked at acquiring, medical practices, and I kind of tried. He wanted to do it. We delved into a little bit, but I steered him away from it because it's difficult to replace the star, which is the doctor, right? You've got to have the license, you got to have the doctor, and there's no supply of doctors to replace them. I said, forget it, man. You're wasting your time.
Yeah.
So, we moved away from that. And on a smaller level, if you're trying to buy a $1.5 million HVAC business and it requires a contractor's license, you don't have one. I mean, there's things you can do, but if you don't have a contractor's license, that's just one little obstacle you got to get over. The guy's got to stay on, or the number two guy's got to come in, or you've got to go get your contractor's license, but some states require apprenticeship years.
Right.
And it's sometimes you can't meet that threshold.
Yeah.
Obviously, doing your due diligence on those criteria are going to be super important too, to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into from that perspective.
Yeah.
That's one hand slap you don't want, right? Well, hey, as we're talking, any kind of myth busters a little bit, any misconceptions about M&A that you see pop up as, again, people are maybe new to this concept, or maybe they've never done a deal and never even thought about doing a deal, that are maybe thinking about it for the first time?
Yeah, I think go back to the no money down stuff. I haven't seen it. It doesn't really work. If it is a no money down deal, it's probably a distressed company. Yeah. Okay. And it's really easy to, put an ad out there and buy a business, no money down, get my free training kind of stuff. And you go through the funnel and you're hooked, and you're going, oh my God, we can do that. Somebody's going to give me their business for no money down. No, they're not going to give you. If it's a profitable business, they're going to, they want money like you do, and they're not going to give it to you.
Right.
Yeah.
John, I got a question.
Give it away, right?
Yeah. Unless, like Ryan Reynolds with Mint Mobile and everything like that. He goes like, I know he's going to crank out 2-3 films, and he's going to be on TV talking about my product. I'm happy to give him 50% of my company.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
For John, no money down. No problem, right?
Well, I think, John, one of those, whether it's no money down, it's not necessarily no money down, but it could be deals where it's no money out of pocket, right? Where you bring in, to your point, you get an SBA loan for a certain percentage, and then you bring in an investor who brings in the other piece of the cash, and you retain some portion of the capital. How often do you see deals like that?
Yeah. So as you move up higher, lower middle market, that's a skill you need to acquire of raising capital, right? Because nobody buys $1 billion business with skin in the game, because it doesn't matter, right? Maybe a guy wants to take over the business, and they can't put 10% down, but they go raise the money and have somebody else put that money down, right?
Right.
So raising capital is, as you move up, like a $2 million EBITDA company, you've got to learn how to raise capital from investors.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's not debt. I'm talking about equity, high net worth individuals, or, not yet into institutional money, but it's, usually high net worth individuals.
Right. Understood. And then a quick question on the SBA, because you mentioned that earlier, and you mentioned the 10%. How often do you see SBA deals where SBA comes to the table with 90%?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite frequent. It's really, it really depends on the SBA lender. There's a lot out there like Live Oak, Byline Bank, and there's a lot out there. And some people just focus on e-commerce lending, right? So you can't take an HVAC company to an SBA e-commerce lender. They just don't like it. They don't know what the mechanics are. So it's not going to pass through underwriting. But if you found a nice, HVAC company, took it to Live Oak Bank, it's got great cash flow. It's doing 1.2 million at the top and 500,000 SDE. They'll finance that 90%.
Okay. So it's more contingent on the bank that you go to than maybe the deal.
Well,
the deal still has to support it.
Yeah. I always tell my students is you can't just go to one bank. You got to take a number of banks to the altar, because sometimes, and this has happened to me, because when I went looking to buy a software company, and we got all the way to the altar, and the underwriter said, you know what, we changed our mind. We're only going to underwrite 60% of the loan. So I had to come up with more, which took him out, and I had to move to another lender.
Wow.
Yeah.
As you're talking about those bigger and bigger deals, we're talking about raising capital. Any tips for raising capital if you're going after, those $2+ million deals?
Yeah, I think it's a skill that you should acquire, especially if you're trying to buy larger cash flowing assets. And that is asking for money. But there's a lot of process about raising money that starts to involve the SEC, because you have to have all the right legal documents placed, subscription agreement, operating agreement, private placement memorandum. And those are costly. Those cost a lot of money. And then you got to go get a pitch deck done, because you're going to be talking to a lot of people and they want to understand the concept. But the main concept is like, what do you do and how am I going to get my money back?
Right. Sure.
Right.
How are you going to turn $1? If I give you $1, how are you going to turn it into $2 or $3?
Yeah.
Right.
Reasonable questions.
Yeah.
There's millions attached, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing that I've realized in the time that I've done, I either assisted with or been in the process of raising capital for myself, is the, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, to your point. How am I going to get my money back? Right. That's the overarching question, really. How much do you, John, do you put it into, to your point, you mentioned creating a pitch deck. How much do you put into the idea that I should probably get somebody who does that to create it for me, as opposed to trying to do it through my own PowerPoint or something like that?
Well, there's two parts of what I'm saying. Get somebody to do it for you. If it's the story and the content within those 11 to 12 slides, that's something you should know how to do yourself and write down.
Right.
If you're talking about artistic, just get somebody else on Fiverr or Upwork to do it. Right. Or now AI to do it. Right. But but understanding like what you do, how you do it, your profit margins, your customers, how you're going to get new customers, and your addressable market, all of that stuff, and how the individual gets paid. You should know that like the back of your butt.
Right.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I follow that.
Yeah, because we tell you what, because you're going to be given that pitch 500 times.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah, that was I think I mentioned briefly about my trucking business, and that was trying to raise capital for a trucking business and trying to help people understand the vision for my business. That took a lot. I mean, the first couple of times it was like, ooh, that one sucked. I got to do that again. I got to go back to the drawing board and redo it. Yeah. And as much as I inherently understood about my business and the time and energy that I was putting into growing it, it's still just an emotional process. And these people they're not making emotional decisions. They're making practical decisions based
They're making
on
financial decisions, right?
exactly. And it's all based on, am I going to get my money back? Right. And it's like, what's the likelihood I'm going to get my money back?
Yeah. Unless it's, when you first start out, it's friends and family, right? They look at you, but once you get outside that circle, it's going to be like, how do I make my money back?
Right.
And
I was trying to do a $1.5 million raise.
Investment. And then they'll look at you and go, do I like that guy? Do I trust that guy? Should I give that guy money? Yeah. And I would say the two parts of this is, if you're an M&A, don't fall in love with any deal in front of you, right? Don't get emotionally attached to it. Just create suffering. And the same with going with investors, right? Don't get emotionally attached to any investor you get pitched to.
That's a good add-on. I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah. Awesome.
Makes sense.
Well, John, I know you've talked about, the two balance sheets, 12 months apart. You got a list of 100 questions, skip levels. So a lot of stuff that you've already shared. Any other tips for that due diligence process that you would share with maybe a first-time, M&A individual that's doing this?
Well, you got to understand your risk. Risk comes from what you don't see, right? So do as much as you can to ask questions. If you don't feel comfortable with it, there's a couple due diligence firms out there that do a great job of looking at every aspect of it. Like, hey, check out his Facebook file. Is he following Nazi followers? Like, okay, I don't want to buy that company, right?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That was not something I had in my mind as due diligence, but now it is. So thank you, John.
Okay. Yeah. He's putting his money into that group. No, thank you.
Right.
You don't want to buy that company, right?
That's awesome.
But dude, have somebody look and get a different perspective on like, what am I not seeing here? Because you're taking over a business that's doing, let's say, $1 million a year in EBITDA, right? You're buying this. Like, I got to understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah. So I got one thing I would add to that is,
go ahead.
Yeah, go check out Jon's systems. I'll give you that plug there, John.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've actually read a bunch of your pieces now, and I purchased a bunch of your pieces now, and that's a lot of really good information in there. And I honestly wish I had read it 7 or 8 years ago. Before the last two acquisitions.
Yeah, I'm sure and stuff. I made mistakes. Like, when I bought that e-commerce company, I didn't really do a good job of looking at their online reputation. The seller boosted his revenues, but didn't account for refunds that were happening. And the customers were going to a specific site and placing complaints about it. And I didn't see that. And then when I bought the company, it was already, 90 days in, and I get these complaints from this website. It was one of those websites where if you want to get the complaint down, you got to pay them $10,000. Yeah, this was a long time ago. But then I just had to make all these refunds to all these customers that were looking for stuff, like having a good reps and warranties contract in place and kind of insurance in place for that to make sure if like any of that comes in, we've got provisions for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Smart. Awesome. Well, there's kind of maybe one final thing I'd love to ask you about. We've been talking about, looking for deals, due diligence, kind of going through the deal process, all of that. Let's talk about maybe, the deal is finalized and now we're in that transition. So any tips for kind of the integration, whether if it's a merger or if it's an acquisition, that transition of ownership, anything that you've seen that works well in those situations?
Yeah, I like I told you, I'm a fan of Warren Buffett, but if you buy a good, profitable business, he used to say, look, I don't tell 400 hitters how to swing the bat, right? If it's a business that's doing well, don't make any changes to it, right? Don't come in and say, hey, we're going to change this process. We're going to fire this process. Like one of the guys I interviewed, he bought a landscaping company and then fired somebody immediately and found that person was responsible for most of the business development.
Oh, geez.
And and he lost a lot of revenue, like 20, 30% in a very short period of time. Just don't make any changes for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Smart.
And if you're buying a great business, you shouldn't have to. I mean, I got a student, we're looking at a school in the Southeast that's doing like $20 million. It's incredible. It's really profitable. He keeps coming back with me about these ideas to like, hey man, we're not putting any new ideas in there. We don't need to. I mean, they're doing a fantastic job. We're not going to scrape another 1% of profitability out of the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great advice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we jump into kind of just wrap up with some key points and action items, anything else that you want to share, or anything else that you've seen that you think our audience would appreciate knowing?
Yeah, it's, M&A world can change your life. Like if you can grow a hell of a lot faster than you could organically. I mean, if you're trying to do a startup, you're going to be spinning your wheels a lot. It's a lot easier to go from 1 to 2 than it is to 0 to 1.
Yeah. Amen.
I've done both. I mean, I was in a startup where we raised capital from Intel, and it took years and years and years for this start to making revenue. And it was 20 years later that it was sold to Shutterstock, but it took an enormous amount of time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's recap a couple points, maybe a few action items, and then I'd love to learn just a little bit more about your site and some of the stuff that you're doing. Just as we were talking, a couple things that resonated with me is, first of all, M&A deals can take a lot of different shapes and sizes. So there's not this one size fits all solution that's going to, immediately solve everything, right? You've got to, put some thought into it, do your due diligence, right? All of those things. Really that range of activities. So negotiation, legal, regulatory compliance, integration planning, right? All of those are things that people need to be thinking about. And then also, right, when you're looking at that M&A deal, careful planning, execution, communication, right? Collaboration between the parties involved. And then also thinking about those long-term implications for employees, customers, stakeholders, right? You talked about the refunds coming in. So those are all things that need to be considered as part of the deal. And then in terms of action items, I think just plan and execute that deal carefully and cautiously. Jon, you talked about, having that clear understanding of all the risks involved, and you get there by doing the due diligence and asking the questions, and then really taking that time necessary, not rushing the process, whether it's, the valuation, negotiation, or the integration, really slowing down and making sure you get it right. So those are some of the things I got, and I think are great action items and key points for our audience. So with that in mind, Jon, you've got a ton of amazing courses and resources on your website. Are there any particular products or services that you'd recommend that somebody would check out if they're just starting in the M&A world?
My courses are pretty affordable, like the, buy deal flow system, how to buy $1 million business. It's for sale for $495. Happy to give your group a discount on that, 50% off. That's cool. Wow. Start with that course, because if you buy that course, it comes with all the other courses. So that's the best course to do right there. Right. And then, go to my Facebook group, join that, which is the top M&A entrepreneurs, and subscribe to my channel. And every week I'll come out with a new episode from a serial acquirer.
Awesome. Love it. And best place to find that, dealflowsystem.net?
Dealflowsystem.net. That's right.
Awesome. Cool. And we'll put that in the show notes so people can easily find it. And Jon, it's been awesome. I have learned a ton about M&A, and appreciate you letting us pick your brain. It's been great.
David's ready to buy that sandwich shop that he drove past the other day.
Philly cheesesteak shop.
Philly cheesesteak.
Yeah, be careful, man. It's like, don't get high on your own supply.
You know me well, Jon.
That's a great sandwich. I'll have another one. Yeah.
Awesome. Good. Well, great spending time with you, Eric. We'll see you. And Jon, thanks again for being our guest today.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.